Let's see. I forgot I have to have this standing vertically. Just let me take it out of the case. And I think I need a stand. There we go. That's... Ooh, take out the post-it notes and then fix it so you can at least see my owl. Hello, welcome, right on time. Wave, pick the wave. I have a mug of hot vanilla. I was gonna do hot chocolate, but I decided not to have chocolate at 10 p.m. It is 10 p.m., right? Yeah. So now I just need the whipped cream. Most important part. Oh, I might have broke it. Oh no. Ah. Oh, I actually might have broken it. Oh no. Come on. Yeah, okay. This is not coming out well. Ah. Okay, well, you know what? It works well enough. Not quite the elegance I was hoping for, but it works out. It's still whipping cream. Whipping cream is extremely expensive in Korea, so... Is it good? That is an odd whipped cream. Oh, what is that? I can't read it, it's in Korean. Oh. It's not that good. The whipped cream's not very good. I'm gonna scoop it out. I don't like it. Okay. Never mind. I'm just gonna use the hot vanilla alone. Yes. I live in Korea. I live in Seoul now. I just moved to Seoul 2 months ago. I spent the last 4 years in Daegu, which is much smaller. So, hello waves. I like sending waves, but it just doesn't go. Fine, don't wave. I'll wave in real life, wait. I can do that too. I should probably keep my glasses close because I have to answer questions. How is your Halloween? I did nothing. And I'm quite happy about that, actually. Because I had 4 papers due this weekend. And on top of my job. And then I finished them all by Saturday. I was really proud of myself. And so today I just downloaded visual novel demos because I'm trying to find some good ones, which they don't really exist. It's really hard to find a good virtual novel. I kind of want to make one, but I don't have time. But my undergrad was in video game design, so my major now is philosophy, since you asked what my major is, Rosebud. My major now is philosophy and theology. There's a question button. Do you have a site where you can look for strong verbs? Oh, that's a good question. I would say Pinterest is a good site. Do I know any other sites for strong verbs? Oh, let's see. I don't think I do. Usually if I'm looking for strong verbs, I'll either look on Pinterest, I'll brainstorm all of them as much as I can, or or I just kind of make notes when I'm reading through different books. I'll take some notes on different words that I find that I want to use later. And I keep those in Notion. I have the Notion software, which is kind of like Evernote, but I think it's better than Evernote. Although I haven't used Evernote in over like 10 years, so maybe it's improved, but I haven't used it, so I don't know. I barely use Notion, honestly. I'm very disorganized. Will you continue your How to Write a Sentence series? Yes. I actually was editing it today because I had to finish my papers first. So I've been working on the edits. The next installment is almost ready, so it will be going up very, very soon. So keep subscribed to my YouTube channel for my How to Write a Series. Or How to Write a Sentence, not How to Write a Series. I can't help you with that. If you don't know what my How to Write a Sentence series is, I teach you how to write step-by-step creative writing, and it's for very, very, very beginners, because I tried to do music production one time, and it was way too overwhelming, and I ended up quitting because it was way too overwhelming. And so I decided to do something for writers that have the same problem. So, tell us more about you. Well, what do you want to know? I can go pretty existential if you let me. So you'll have to be a little more specific. So as a philosophy major, that's a very loaded question. But what's your background? Do you mean my background or the background behind me? Because this is my apartment. You can see this is my clothes rack. Country. I am from the United States. I am from California, close to the LA area. But I haven't lived in LA in over, almost 9 years now. I went from California to Tennessee, and then I went from Tennessee to Daegu, and then I went from Daegu to Seoul. So the last 4 years has been Korea. Oh, this hot vanilla is so good. Do you speak Korean? Nope. Not even a little bit. I tried learning when I was in America. When I was in Tennessee, I studied Korean for 2 years. Or at least I went to classes for 2 years. I shouldn't say that I studied, because that's not true. But, yeah, I tried to study Korean in America. And I feel like I did pretty well, but looking back, maybe I didn't. So I don't speak any Korean. I can read Hangul. Hangul is pretty easy to read. I believe it was the king that created Hangul. He said that a wise man can learn it in a day, and an idiot can learn it in 10 days. And he was right. I learned it in 4 days, so I am proud of my mediocrity. Is it tough living there without knowing the language? Yes and no. Like, I can do pretty much anything I need to get done. Everything, like, here's an example. These are like my garbage bags for food, so I just had these on my desk. This is convenient. But if you look, like, part of it's in Korean and then the other part's in English. So it has the English and then it has the translation. So it's not too bad. It's kind of like living in California and not speaking English. Because in California everything's in English and Spanish. So if you only speak Spanish, you're fine. If you speak English, you're fine. It's kind of like that in Korea. If you speak Korean, you're fine. If you don't, you're fine. It's really not that bad. Although you have to speak English or Korean, I would say. It's much harder when you get into the other languages, because English is required by Korean schools. So basically everyone you meet in Korea had to go to school for English since elementary school, so they can understand it pretty well. Just don't speak very quickly, because they get overwhelmed really fast. But if you kind of speak slowly, then there's really not that many problems. And usually the place that you work will do a whole bunch of translating for you. So if you get really stuck on anything, so like if my apartment has any problems, I call my school, and the HR department takes care of everything that needs to be done in Korean. So I don't have to worry too much about that. It does get difficult sometimes. It's really hard to kind of make friends or build community, but it's kind of hard to do that anyways as a foreigner in general. And so even if you speak Korean, but there's kind of like a barrier there. But yeah, it's much harder when you don't speak Korean. So I would like to learn at some point, but between working part-time and writing books and getting my master's degree in philosophy and Christian theology, I don't have any room in my brain. Anything you don't like about Korea? Ooh, the drinking culture makes me kind of uncomfortable. So, like, drinking really heavily is pretty normal here, and that doesn't bother me directly, but when you sit on the bus with really plastered old men, it gets uncomfortable really fast. And I say that because that happened to me on Friday night twice. And I did not want to be on that bus. So I waited a whole 10 or 15 minutes for the next bus to come because I was too uncomfortable to be on that bus with a bunch of drunk old people, or just drunk people in general. Not a fan. Anything else? Let's see. Anything else I don't like about Korea? Oh, I can't really think of anything. There's not a whole bunch to hate, really. Why did you want to live in Korea? Any particular reason? So when I was in college, for my undergrad, I used to come home really late at night and I would watch Korean dramas. And they didn't have any subtitles or anything, but I would watch them because I just really hated American television, because even back then, when was that? 10 years ago? Something like that for my undergrad. Yeah, more than 10 years ago. We won't talk about how long ago that was. Anyways, even back then, American TV was not very creative. So I would watch Korean dramas, and Korean dramas are very creative and very different from American dramas. And so I would watch those without subtitles, and I would try to guess what everyone was saying. And that made it more fun for me and more engaging, because I really don't like watching TV or movies, because I need to interact with things. I can't just sit there and stare at it. So even if I watch a movie, I'm probably doing something else at the same time, or I'm stopping the movie every 20 minutes and going and doing something else, because I just can't. I need to interact. And so yeah, I would watch those, and I watched those for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and I got really into K-pop back then, way back then. So 2006, 2005. Yeah, 2005, 2006 was when I started listening to K-pop. So my first group was I'm from the K-pop first generation. So even my students are amazed at some of the groups that I know, because they're so old in comparison. So my first group was NRG. You've probably never heard of them because they're just incredibly old, and even half my students have never heard of them, and I have to bring up the song, and they'll be all like, oh crap, you know this group. And then there's Kangta, who's pretty famous. He was from HOT. And who else? Wisung, Shinhwa. I used to listen to all those back in college. So after listening to all of that and watching all the dramas, I decided to come here on vacation in 2014 with my mom And so we came here, and when we got here and we stayed here a week, I was like, oh yeah, I could live here. And so I just decided to move. But it took me 3 years to financially get to a place where I could get my teaching certificate and then get everything set up. And then I just winged it and came over. So, oh my God, you're so smart. I don't know if I'm smart. I just deal with what I got. How old are you? I am 35 years old. I know, I'm much older than people think I am. But I enjoy my age, so I am not embarrassed at all about it, really. I'm more so just embarrassed, or no, I'm not so embarrassed. I'm more apprehensive of what people believe of 35-year-olds. Because people just think it's such an old age. It's really not. It's like, once you hit 30, you finally feel like yourself. You couldn't pay me to go back to my 20s. You really couldn't. I enjoy my 30s so much more. So, yeah, I'm 35. So, I'm a bit older. Let's see. What are common mistakes for newbie writers? That's a good question. Oh, there's so many mistakes. And you know what? There's so many mistakes as an advanced writer, too. Which we can talk about another time. But, I mean, mistakes are just made all the time. I make mistakes every day in my writing. But I think the mistakes I run into the most, number one, is thinking you're going to be an amazing artist as soon as you sit down and write for like a week. And then that's kind of a problem because you're gonna suck. When you learn something new, you're just gonna suck. So just be prepared for that. Just enjoy sucking. I don't like the way I worded that, but just enjoy it. Enjoy the learning process for number one. What else are some new mistakes, or some mistakes that newbies make? Not new mistakes. That doesn't make any sense. Well, no, not all mistakes are new. That's a lie. Some mistakes are quite repeated. Let's see. I would say, one thing I know, some mistakes I've seen, although I feel like this is a little more advanced, perhaps thinking that your idea is new. It's probably not. Thinking people can steal your ideas. They can, but they probably won't, because stealing your idea involves work, and people don't like working that hard. So if you have an idea, don't worry about people stealing it, and on the other hand, don't talk about it too much, because what people end up doing is they talk about their ideas and then they never do them. And that's very, very, very common for new writers, because you're so excited that you want to tell people about it. So you tell everyone about it, and then you're not excited anymore because it's more fun when it's a secret, I guess. And so when it's like bottled up inside you as a secret, you want to put it on paper more. So just put it on paper and keep your mouth shut. People probably won't steal your ideas. And you can't copyright ideas. Another thing, you can't copyright ideas, and you can't copyright titles. Also, another fun thing you should know is your work is automatically copywritten, according to at least U.S. law. It's copywritten as soon as you put it down in a computer word processor. And so I know some writers who are older than me, or just not keeping up with current trends or current laws for writing. They'll say to like mail it to yourself. Don't do that. That's it's called the poor man's copyright, and it hasn't actually been a legal binding idea for the last 30 years or 20 years at least, because I think when I first started writing when I was in middle school, that was a thing, but it's not a thing. So just remember that as soon as you put it in your computer, it saves into kind of the hardware or software, and it's automatically copywritten, it's automatically yours, but you do have to copyright it at the Copyright Office if you ever want to publish it yourself. But I'm going on a weird tangent here, but if you ever want to submit your work, like poetry or anything like that, to a magazine, don't copyright it first, because then the magazine will say, oh, this writer doesn't trust us. This writer is trying to hold on to their work very, very tightly. So usually if you submit to like a magazine or a agent or anything like that, you shouldn't copyright it. Because it shows mistrust between you and the person you're trying to sell it to. So don't do any of that. I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, I would say as a new writer, you won't be brilliant. Just enjoy the learning process. Learn to take criticism well, and learn to ignore other types of criticism. I had to learn that as well. I used to do a internship. Yeah, that's what it was. I did an internship for a blog, and people hated me. And they put some nasty comments and stuff in there. But, I mean, now I don't really care. Like, I actually found a blog post of a lady that was just ranting about how much she hated me. And I actually found it really entertaining. So, she compared me to Mark Driscoll. And if you don't know who Mark Driscoll is, he's a very intense Christian pastor. So she compared me to him, which she doesn't know that he's one of my favorite pastors to watch, so it was a compliment as far as I was concerned. So learn to get some thick skin, because there's going to be people that hate you, and there's going to be people that love you anyways, and it's just part of the gig. Let's see. Is creative writing a skill you hone or something that you are sort of born with? Well, that kind of goes into the, I wouldn't say it's philosophical, but I would say that there's a definite difference between a talent and a gift. So a gift is something you are born with. A gift is something like a 3-year-old playing Mozart with his eyes closed on America's Got Talent. That's a gift. Like, he didn't take the time to learn that talent. It's something he didn't improve over time. He was just born with it, and that's a gift. And I feel like with social media and things like America's Got Talent, we think everyone is born gifted, but really most people are just born empty vessels, I think. I think people have an inclination towards something, so they're naturally drawn to something, but that doesn't mean they're naturally good at it. And I feel like writing is one of those things, because we all have stories that we want to tell. And it's kind of like art too, I think, just arts in general. They're very, one type of art will be easier for one person, and another type of art will be easier for another person. But I feel like with writing, there's very few people that are born with it, but you might be automatically interested in it. So I've always loved reading because my family loves reading, and I always loved books, and so I would try to copy books because I wanted to make stories too. And of course they were terrible. They were absolutely awful, and I had some kids at school even made fun of me because they were so bad. But I didn't really care. I just wanted to write. So I just kept writing, and I kept writing, and I kept writing. And that's what evolved the talent. So talent is just working hard for a long period of time. Gifts is something you're born with, and that's just something God gives you. You don't get a say in that, and you don't get a say in what other gifts other people get. But you do have a say in your talent. In fact, your talent is primarily your responsibility. And no one's going to give it to you. They'll give you tools for it, but you have to put in the work, you have to put in the sweat, you have to put in the time, and you have to put in a lot of time. And that's where people get really stuck with talent. I started writing when I was in the 3rd grade. So as soon as I could write my name, I was like, I'm going to make a story. And the first story I ever wrote, I think was about computers, Mac computers, or it was Apple back then. I don't think, or was it Mac back then? I can't remember. It was like Apple IIe era, if anyone knows what Apple IIes are. They were basically the first Apple computer. No, they were second or third something, I can't remember. They were one of the first Apple computers, and they were only in black and green. And I don't mean exterior, I mean the screen was only black and green. But yeah, so like I made a story about that. And then I made like a longer story about my cousin finding a mail order bride, and he still doesn't talk to me, but that's okay. That's okay. So like, and then I started taking classes when I was 14 years old. And I'm not saying that like you have to start early, because you don't. You don't have to start any talent early. You just have to start. And that's the hardest part. Actually, you know what? That's wrong. Starting isn't hard. Starting is easy. Continuing past the point of beginner is difficult, because you're going to be a beginner for like a year or two, at the least. And so like, I put on like, I started doing K-pop dancing about a year and a half ago. And so I put the video up on my Instagram. You could see it there. But like my first class, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't remember any of the moves. I couldn't do them at time. I have a martial arts background, so in my head, every time I tried like dancing, I would just do it as quickly as possible, because when you're a martial artist, your primary concern is quick reactions. But that doesn't work in dancing. So anyways, if you watch the video, my like first K-pop class is just trash. It's really entertaining to watch, actually. And then I slowly progressed for about a year, and I'm still not amazing, but getting past that like 6-month mark was really difficult, because you spend like 6 months to a year just seeing how inadequate you are in terms of skill. And so starting is easy. It's just getting past that point, into getting past beginner and getting into the intermediate, which is the hardest. Once you can get into intermediate, you're pretty much in it. You're in it. I don't want to use this phrase, but you're in it to win it. Oh, my soul cringed a little bit using that phrase. I don't like that phrase. But yeah, you at least know, you've gotten the basic ideas and you know where you want to go. Hello, I'm Pinksy. Hello, dear. I have another question. Let's see. My teacher loves extended metaphors. What are some easy ones to write? I'm not sure what an extended metaphor is. I would say symbolism is good, although symbolism usually comes, I don't know if it comes naturally, actually. How do I do symbolism? I don't even know how I do symbolism. I'll have to think about that. As for metaphors, I kind of think about it in terms of like songwriting. So if you've ever studied songwriting, which even I really haven't studied songwriting too much, I would say instead of an extended metaphor, keep it like a theme. So like if you're listening to a song and you're listening to the chorus and the verses, they usually have the same theme. So if the chorus is about, oh, this woman is my moon and stars, then like maybe the rest of the verse is like about the sky and is about darkness and about light and things like that. And so you kind of keep it in the box of a theme, and you just kind of keep going with it. I don't know what the advantage of an extended metaphor would be. Because usually you use a metaphor to give your readers a quick idea of what's going on in the scene. I guess it depends on what kind of genre you're writing. So if you're writing a story, if you're writing a story, you don't want to have a really long metaphor. If you're writing poetry, you can make the metaphor go on for 600 pages if you want. That's a thing. So I guess it would depend on what you're writing, to be honest. But I'd say if you're trying to make it really long, then keep it in a theme. That would or keep it symbolic. How important do you think research is for creative writing? So that's a good question. I would say that it's absolutely important. And it's important for the reason that it'll probably give you more ideas for your stories. I would also say that don't spend too much time researching, because a lot of people do that. They'll just research and research and research and feel like they can't start. The truth is you can write the entire story and research at the same time, or even research after, and then go back and fix things. And your editor will also pick up things as well. But I would say research a little bit in the beginning, and then you're going to end up researching in the middle, and then you'll probably research after that, and your editor will research, and there'll be a lot of researching going on. But I would say that it's important because it will give you more ideas. Even if you're just researching so I'll give you an example. So for my next book, not Gods of the Sea, but the book that's coming after that, I've already written the rough draft. But for that book, what I had to do was research the 1920s Prohibition, because that's the time frame that the book takes place in. And so I spent a lot of time researching that. And it was actually fantastic research. I recommend everyone learn about the 1920s Prohibition. It'll teach you everything you need to know about, media, because even the newspapers were really manipulative back then too. And people that just get swept up in the idea of building utopia and just how it goes terribly, terribly wrong. Basically, the 1920s Prohibition in America, they wanted to make alcohol illegal. And they actually succeeded. They made alcohol illegal for a short time because they thought alcohol was the root of evil, and it was making people demonic. And so they thought, if we get rid of alcohol, if we just get rid of this satanic thing, then everyone will be fine. And then all the media jumped on, and all the churches jumped on, and all the people that wanted to save the world got on, and it ended up creating the mafia. So we have the mafia now because we tried to create utopia. So it backfired really, really badly. Because they created black markets so they could sell alcohol behind the government's back, and the government didn't like that, so they poisoned alcohol, and they actually poisoned their own citizens. And it's just like this crazy story that you're like, this is fiction, and it's not. And so reading all of that was just, number one, really interesting, and number two, gave me a lot of story ideas, especially about the theme, because the main character is a man that owns a winery, and he's considered like the social outcast, and so he touches upon this idea that people around him are trying to create this utopia by banning his business, basically. And so it gets kind of reflective and more philosophical in that sense, which is actually more of the fiction that I want to write. I really want to write more philosophical fiction. About kind of the human struggle with good and evil. And Gods of the Sea, I didn't actually try to research for Gods of the Sea, but I was taking a theology class about morality according to the Bible. And that ended up just seeping into all of the plot points of Gods of the Sea, because Gods of the Sea is about judging good and evil. And so when I was thinking about the characters that have to judge, I had to really get into their heads. And judging good and evil, you really have to think about morality. And so it just really helped. It really helped with filling in some of the plot holes. So that was a really long answer to a really simple question, but I hope it helped. Let's see. Let's see. What are some interesting things, eras everyone should know about research? I mean, you don't have to know everything about everything. I don't find that very useful, honestly. And honestly, I know people that know everything about everything, and I don't like staying in the same room with them for a long period of time. I would say research whatever you need to research, or study whatever you need to study for your writing project or whatever you're interested in. And don't try to learn everything, and don't try to, unless you're a teacher, then I would recommend that you learn more. I would recommend that you learn more than you have to teach. So, where did I hear that from recently? I heard that from someone recently. I can't remember what I was watching. But someone was talking about how teachers sometimes just read off their PowerPoint, and they don't know their topic very thoroughly. So if you're a teacher, you should know your topic very thoroughly. I know as a teacher, I have to learn as I go, because it's hard to know everything about the English language, because the English language is really complicated. I would say whatever you're interested in is whatever you should know about. I really love, what do I love? I really love researching about ancient Asia. So I know a random amount about Korean history and Chinese history and Japanese history, and I just find it fascinating. I know way too much about the 1920s prohibition, and I can talk your ear off about it. And recently I've been looking into writing a kind of Greek-style Gothic novel. It's kind of like a mix of a Gothic novel and a Greek tragedy. So I've been trying to study Greek tragedies, which is not actually my favorite thing. I remember learning those in high school, or reading those in high school, and they were not my favorite. But I also remember not liking Shakespeare in high school too, and I like him a lot now that I don't have to be forced to read Romeo and Juliet 6 times a year. Because that's actually his worst work, I think. I said it. That's right, I said it. Romeo and Juliet's garbage. I don't like that book. But, Midsummer Night's Dream is amazing. Hamlet is fantastic. Hamlet, I adore. That one's my favorite, actually. 12th Night? 12th Night. I like that one, too. So, but I liked reading Edgar Allan Poe more. So, I also had, I had some questions from Amy Emma 378. Yes, I can read numbers. 378. What's your process for developing a new idea or book? That's a good question. I mean, ideas come from everywhere, and you'll get to the point when you're a writer, you'll just have ideas, and you'll have more ideas than you can do with. You'll have way too many ideas. But I think for developing an idea or new book, I pick the idea that's harassing me mentally the most. So if there is an idea that just keeps popping up, I'm like, I need to write this down. And so I'll start writing it down. I'll start thinking about the characters first and what their goal would be and who would get in their way of getting it and why they would get in each other's way. And then I just kind of go from there. And then you've seen my Post-its here. This is how I kind of plan out my books. And so if I have enough scenes in my head, I'll just write them out and I'll put them on Post-its and try to arrange them, and I'll write out scenes. And usually once I write about 10 scenes or so, I'll realize, oh, this is probably a good idea for a book, or I'll be like, oh, no, this isn't really a good idea for a book, but these ideas would be good in this other book that I'm writing, so I'm just going to throw them in there instead. So it just kind of ends up happening like that. But I find that if I have a collection of ideas and I start working on them, the more you work with ideas, the more ideas you will get. So the more you create, the more you will be given to create, I would say. And Vina Lena had a pretty similar question with, I have ideas, but I don't know how and where to start. Start anywhere. Just start anywhere. Just put things on the page. Put anything on the page. It doesn't matter what it is. And then it doesn't matter if it's in order. I don't write linearly. I think it's weird if you write linearly, because I feel like as soon as you have a scene in your head, you should write it down. And then once you have all the dominant scenes that are in your head written down, then you try to link them together. Because usually when I have an idea of like a beginning, sometimes beginning, and then I have an idea of like some plot twists, and then I have some ideas of maybe some romantic scenes because I write a lot of romance. So I usually have like the plot points in my head. So like, you know, you have like, well, this is really old school, but if you have the beginning and then it gets to the turning point and then it goes up to the climax, and then or it has the rising action and then the climax, and then there's supposed to be falling action, but I don't think anyone uses that anymore. So I would say just kind of like the climax and then the win and then the ending. And so I usually have those points in my head first, and so I'll write them out first. So sometimes I even write the ending before I write the beginning. And if it works, just put it on paper. And then the second part of Vina Lena's question was how to promote and get readers. The short answer is I have no clue. To be honest, if I was good at promoting, I would sell more books each month, but I'm terrible at marketing. I'm awful. And I don't have any energy to learn. But I know with my Wattpad, all I did was I made myself publish every, I think it was Friday or Monday or something. So I made myself publish every week. And that was just to get me to consistently write. And that naturally brought more and more readers to my page. So I heard, I really love John Acuff. If you don't know who he is a kind of a motivational speaker, but not in the obnoxious sense. He's more of just kind of, if you want to kind of reach your goals, you need to do these things. And he's very straightforward about it. And he's not gimmicky at all, which is why I really like him. And so if you pick up any of his books, like Finish is really good. I really recommend Start, and I recommend Finish. He has a new one called Soundtracks. And he was saying in Soundtracks, that it's better to consistently do something average, so than to sporadically do something brilliant. So it's better if you write garbage every week and post it online than it is for you to have one great piece of writing and post it once a year. So just consistently write. That's the only way you can get readers. Probably if you want to promote, probably just consistently promote. Going by that theory. Once I actually get around to doing that myself, I'll let you know how it goes. I have another question here. When you have to write a text piece for an exam, roughly an hour, what's the best way to plan ahead? Text piece for an exam. Text piece. That's a good question because I never took exams. So like I said, my undergrad was in video game design, and we didn't really have exams. We had projects. So I had to, my project every quarter or every semester was to make a video game. So I didn't have exams. And I didn't take SATs either, because my goal was to not go to college, and I somehow failed. But I didn't take SATs either. And then in my university now, all I have to do is write essays. And they're research essays. And so what I usually do is I take about a week to research and find sources and things. And then I just write out notes. I take about a day or two to write out notes, and that helps me write the essay a lot faster. But if you have a text piece in an exam, I would say this. If you know what the topic is going to be about, I'm going to give you Jordan Peterson's advice. This is not my advice, and I'm too nervous to do it, but he says when you're trying to understand when you're trying to recall information, the best thing that you can do is to read the text for maybe about 10 or 15 minutes, put the text away, and then try to recall everything and write it down in like a journal or a notebook. And that will help you recall things. It'll get your brain moving and create those neural pathways to get you to remember things. And then it'll be easier and easier for you to recall. And on top of it, when you put things in your own words, it's easier for you to understand and then write the essay later. I haven't done that just because in philosophy I have way too much information, and I just can't keep up with what I have now. So to read for 10 minutes and then put it away and then write it out just overwhelms me too much. It probably would be really good. I think I tried it at one point. I was trying to learn marketing, and I did it, and it worked really well, and I can almost still remember everything I wrote down in that time that I was learning marketing. But for philosophy, I'm just trying to keep above water. So so I kind of gave up on doing that. But yeah, that would be my advice for that, based on my very little knowledge. And I don't give my students exams either as a teacher, so we don't have exams. Thank God. I don't find exams particularly gratifying, or they don't produce any skills, so I don't find them very useful. Also, when you get a job, you're probably not taking exams, unless you have a strange job. So, I did have a job that made me do training and then test regularly on it, and I complained a lot about that, so that's a thing too. I had a lot of questions on Wattpad. I want to get through some of them here. Let's see. Jungi is my heart. I said that completely weird, I'm sorry. Says, hi, I won't be able to make it, but can you answer this question? How do you make your writing so descriptive and overall amazing? Oh, thank you. Also, do you have any tips for me to become a better writer? Things that helped you? Descriptive. Oh, to make your writing more descriptive, I am making a video on this, but it's more of the beginner's side. So if more advanced, I feel like whenever you read something, pay attention to how other people describe things. And you don't have to copy them or anything, but just take note of how they kind of scatter the descriptions and how they draw them out, what words they use, things like that. I know when I was first starting to write, I read this book, and I can't remember for the life of me what book it was, but there was a public speaker, and he would go around and he would say, if you give me a quarter, because, quarters were a lot of money back then, he was like, if you give me a quarter, I'll tell you the secret to being a great writer. And so people would give him a quarter. And he said, go pick up your favorite book by your favorite author and copy it down word for word. And then everyone got mad that they lost a quarter. But the point is that if you pay attention very closely to how other people write, your writing will also improve. And it becomes natural. And when you first start, you'll be copying people. That's just what you'll be doing, because when you're learning, you're copying. You're trying to emulate the person in front of you, and that's normal for everything. So, if you're a beginner, you're going to copy, and then once you copy this person over here, and then you copy this person over here, and then you copy this person over here. And then you start to kind of blend them together. And then when you become more advanced, you start putting your own voice in there. And then you don't need to copy anymore, because you're no longer an amateur. And so once you've gotten past that point, you won't need to copy anymore. You'll be inspired and you'll be influenced, but you won't have to copy. But when you're first writing, you'll probably copy a lot, and that's totally fine. Just don't publish it for money. Just do it to learn. It's kind of like if you, I started learning drawing recently, and I trace. And I learned, when I first started to learn drawing, I didn't trace at all. And I learned more from tracing than I did from trying to learn not tracing. Actually, where's my book? I can show you an example. Also, I need to get up. Ow. So, I'm going to show you some examples from my book here. So, when I first started to try drawing, I was very like, oh, I can't copy. I need to do this, on my own. And that was a terrible idea because I did terribly. And so, here's like, this is funny because this is Jungi, but here's like the first drawing I tried to do, and at least from the last, 10 years or so, and it's terrible, as you can see. But then I found an app called DaVinci Eye, and DaVinci Eye lets you kind of put the grab a picture and then it'll kind of project it onto the paper so you can trace it. And so I redid it as a tracing, and it came out much better. And here's the cool thing, because I traced, I didn't have to worry about the shapes and stuff. I could focus a lot on the shading. And so I found out that I'm actually not garbage at shading. I'm actually pretty good at it. And so I focused really on shading. I started learning about these details. When I was doing this, I was like, oh, this is kind of how the nose works, and this is kind of like, I learned about the shadowy places on your face. And I couldn't learn that without tracing. Like, I had to trace to learn that. And the same thing with writing. You'll learn a lot if you copy a little bit for the first part, and then you'll start to get better on your own. And then where's my latest drawing? And then it kind of just slowly turned into this. So, and then I started getting more creative and kind of branching out. So this is kind of like the style I really like doing. This is supposed to be J-Hope, but as you can see, it's not like really traditional shading. It's more of my own style now, and that'll kind of happen with you as well. When you start writing, it's going to be like emulating other writers that you enjoy, and that's totally fine. And then you'll start building your own style, and you'll start to learn how things work, and then by the end of it, everyone will be copying you, and that's the circle of artistic life. It's the greatest compliment when people start copying you. So that would be my answer for that. Is there a particular... Oh, this is from Mary Moon is a Moon. Oh, okay. Good to know. Is there a particular order? I'm guessing it says offer, but I'm guessing it means order. Is there a particular order in which a story should be written? No. Write it however you want. I don't write linearly. I said that before. And I'm not sure who does. If they do, they're impressive to me because I've never done it. I just write all the scenes that I know, and then I go back and fill them in. And then I actually read my book backwards. So I read the last chapter first, and then I read the next chapter, and that will help me with the consistency to make sure that I didn't miss any plot points. And then my editor will fix whatever I missed. And that's what editors are for. God bless editors. Do not publish a book without an editor. Ask me how I know. All right, and let's see. There's quite a few. What if the essay I need to write is in my second language? It's somehow hard to find those words. Oh, I feel you on that one. For my Korean classes, I had to write some projects in Korean, and it was just brutal. I would say this. So, my writing, my vocabulary as an English speaker is actually very low, and my students don't believe me when I tell them this. But I actually have incredibly low vocabulary for an English native. And people are surprised by that because I use my words really well. But I don't have many words to pull from. I actually write, if you look at my writing is at a middle school level for my books. I don't write really high level. I think when I get more into philosophical fiction, like The Beast of Napa, which I've already written, it has more of a classical style, so it feels a little more eloquent. So I think that language is probably high school level, but I don't write above a high school level. Even my college essays, I don't. I try to make everything very clear and concise, and I don't need to use, $50,000 words to do so. So I would say this, when you're writing, no matter what you're writing, in whatever language, don't worry so much about collecting words and using a huge variety of them. Just take what you know and use it really, really well. So don't focus so much on, I don't have a big vocabulary. It's not important. I know people that have a massive vocabulary when you talk to them, and they can't write worth garbage. God bless them. They can do everything else, but they just can't write. Or they'll have I know more of these people. They have an incredible vocabulary, incredibly communicative. And then you talk to them and you have no idea what they're saying. Just no idea. They've gotten so lost in the words that they know that they've lost track of who they're talking to. And who you're talking to is much more important than what you know. So when you're communicating with someone, remember that you're writing a paper and someone else is going to read it. So it's more important that you can get your thoughts to that person than it is for them to be impressed by whatever you're saying. Because here's the thing, what happens more often than not is if you write really, really, really impressively with a lot of huge words and just really academically, I would say, sometimes it just makes people feel stupid and they stop reading. Now, probably if you're writing an essay, that's not going to be the case because you have a teacher on the other side. But trust me, your teacher's going to care way more that your ideas on paper are clear than she or he will that you're using massive words. Because I've faced the same thing. I've read some people's work, not really my students. My students are kind of pretty skilled, but I've read a lot of work. I've read work by my professors. My professors have written textbooks that I was forced to read for the class, and I'm like, what are you saying? This is supposed to be like a 101 class, and you're writing to a advanced course, and I have no idea what you're saying. I don't want to read this. So I would say your teacher's going to care that your ideas are clear. So whatever vocabulary you have, use it. If you're looking for a word, if you're writing in English, use an English dictionary. I would say this because I know my Korean students, they'll use Korean dictionaries, and the Korean dictionaries don't understand the context as well as an English dictionary. And if you're at the point where you're writing in English or in a second language, you should be using their dictionaries. Don't use your dictionary. The context will be better. Because I've ran into so many problems with Naver dictionary, and I'm like, it's not how we use those words. So sometimes I'll be like, what does this even mean? And then I'll look at the neighbor and I'll be like, oh, that's what they think it means, but that's not what it means at all. So, yeah, watch out for that. Watch out for that. I got some messages. I'm sorry I didn't say. I was talking a lot. Ariba for sure. You are a huge inspiration. I love all your fanfics. I'm so happy you're doing a live today. Aw, well, thank you. I appreciate that. All the waves, if it lets me. I'm hitting the wave button, but it's just not enjoying my touch. That's also a weird thing to say. Okay, so let's see. Oh, no, don't close things. Okay, good. Did I miss any questions? I'll have some good questions. It's gonna be a long live. All right, so let's see. Go back to Wattpad. I have so many questions. Let's see. Oh, I don't remember seeing these. Okay. I skimmed through these before, but I didn't read all of them. Alina Lee Yang. So let's see. How do you get ideas for the story plots? I loved every single book of yours. You're an inspiration. Oh, are you the same person? But let's see. How do you get ideas for the story plots? Research and stealing from other stories and then twisting them a little bit. That usually helps. Everything in the book that you've read by anybody in the history of ever has been stolen from somewhere else. Big surprise. For example, if you've ever read Man in the Iron Mask, or if you've ever watched the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, which was an amazing movie, from decades ago, basically, part of that story is the king falls in love with this woman and then has her husband killed in the line of duty, so he can take her for himself. That is very ripped off from the Bible. Uriah, I think. So the story of Uriah. Yeah, Uriah. And so, maybe. It's in there. King David, for sure. King David did the exact same thing. So steal from history, steal from other books, and then combine everything together into a beautiful, beautiful Frankenstein of a book. Another thing that I usually do is I brainstorm possible things that could happen next when I really get stuck. So I'll make like a list. So this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And then I'll go through each one and I'll be all like, well, this probably won't happen because the character's motivations are actually this. So that's not going to work. And then this one makes a little bit more sense, but it doesn't fit in with his character and he would really react this way if that happened. Which might make the plot even more interesting. And then you'll get to one that's all like, this one makes the most sense. How can I make this one the most interesting? How is your life in Korea? What is your profession? How do you get time to be on Wattpad with your profession? I actually only work part-time as a teacher, so I have more time to do my schoolwork, because I have a lot of schoolwork. So, but life in Korea is pretty good. There's no real problems. This week, when I first moved to Seoul, it was kind of a nightmare, but things are kind of settling, or at least I'm just adjusting to the chaos, I guess. Or I'm just accepting the chaos. There's that too. Do you speak multiple languages? If yes, which? By Bezel X234. Nope, I speak English and sometimes not very well at that. So that's it. That's all I do. Ku Kors. What did you use to learn Korean before moving to Korea? Technically I didn't learn Korean. So, but I would say, I went to an academy. I went to classes, and I really recommend, I don't recommend studying a language by yourself. If you can do it, you're an amazing person. But the problem is what you'll run into, and I say this as an ESL instructor. What you'll run into is you'll know all these words and you won't be able to like get them out. They'll just be stuck in your head, and then you'll try to get them out of your mouth and people will be like, what are you saying? So I really, really recommend that you join a class and you actually speak to people. So you can one, get over the fear of speaking the language, and two, so you can kind of gauge your accent and how well people understand you and kind of what words you need to change and things like that. So I really, really recommend going to a class or you can get a tutor online. I mean, there's tutors everywhere. I used Amazing Talker for a while and it was really nice. But I'm still just garbage at learning languages. I'm just not good at it. I need a Korean boyfriend. So, although funnily enough, so everyone tells me to like get a Korean boyfriend so I learn Korean. And every time I've gone on a date in Korea, we've just switched to English because my Korean is that bad. So, let's see. I am writing in English, that's my second language. How should I better myself for the spots I need to work on? So first just decide on one thing you want to work at a time. Don't try to work on everything at once because it's too overwhelming and it's really discouraging, actually. Try to focus on one thing you want to work on. So if you want to work on vocabulary, work on building your vocabulary. If you want to work on kind of simple sentences, work on simple sentences. If you want to work on complex sentences, work on complex sentences. If you want to work on opinions, work on opinions. Agreeing and disagreeing, work on that separately. So work on each piece separately, maybe like 1 month at a time, if you can. But just keep writing consistently. That's the only way to get better. Just keep writing consistently. And just another thing, just allow yourself to be garbage. Just allow yourself to not be good at what you're doing and allow yourself to slowly improve. It's very hard to quickly improve, and that's the hardest thing to remember. Especially, I know a lot of my advanced students, they get really discouraged because they're advanced and you slow down a lot more. So when you're beginning, you learn really quickly because you're really excited and everything's new. And so you'll learn vocabulary quickly and you'll learn grammar quickly. And then you'll get to more complicated stuff and it'll be a challenge. And you'll be like, oh, this is good. And then you'll get to a point where you're like, I know this, I already know this, I already know this, I already know this. And then you just kind of get stuck. So it's actually much more harder to improve as an advanced student than it is to improve as a beginning student. But it's harder to stay motivated as a beginning student than it is to be motivated as an advanced student. So that's the paradox of living. I feel like I saw something else. Okay. Let's see. Kukors also asked, how is life in Korea? I hope it's okay if I read this whole thing. How is life in Korea? I'm hoping to study or live there when I go to college, but I'm worried because I'm Blasian. I'm assuming that's Black Asian. And considering with some of the stereotypes they put on Black people, I'm nervous. So, my jaw locked. With that question, I would say this, because I get that question pretty often with my students who want to move to America because they're afraid of stereotypes in America as well. And it's not something I would overlook, but it's not something that I would get stuck on either. And I would say, I feel like if I try to give you examples of things to be afraid of, that's not going to be very useful. I could give you examples from things I've had to deal with being a foreigner in Korea that were unpleasant. And I could give you a list of experiences that other people have gone through and that we've all gone through. But I don't feel like it's really that helpful. So like, because everyone's experiences are so different, you probably will not run into a guy who takes you on a date and shows you a picture of his collection of foreign girls that he has in the city. You probably won't run into that, but that's what happened to me. So, guy took me on a date and he's like, look at all these foreign women that I've collected. So, you probably won't run into stuff like that. So everyone's experience is a little bit different. So I would say this. You probably will run into some unpleasant things no matter where you go in any country. Even in your own country. So even if I went home right now, I'd probably have to deal with a lot of very uncomfortable things. That's because no matter where you go, people suck. It's just a horrible truth. People just suck. But I wouldn't be afraid because of those things. Because you're going to run into them no matter where you go. And even if you stay where you are now, you're just going to run into things that are unpleasant. I would say in Korea, you don't really need to be scared of anything. Korea is a very advanced first world country. So it's nothing, there's no violent crimes against people or foreigners or anything like that in this country for sure. For me, like I worry about going to places like China because I'm Christian, and they actually get persecuted. So like I worry about, more intense things like that, but there's nothing like that in Korea as far as I know. No one has ever said anything to me about that. And I've never heard any stories. And I've never heard any statistics. But, and you will run into some of the general stuff, like it's hard to make a community because you're a foreigner, and maybe there's a language barrier, or maybe there's just the barrier that you're a foreigner. And Korea is 99% Korean. That is the actual statistic. That is not made up. It is 99% Korean and 1% foreigners. So you'll run into stuff, and I've ran into stuff plenty of times. But I still enjoy it here. So even with the unpleasantries you will run into, no matter where you live, even if you stay in your own city, people will be unpleasant sometimes. There's two pieces of wisdom, I would say, in this kind of situation. One, I really like reading about Stoic Wisdom recently. So I'm not an expert on it or anything. But I do know that Stoics have a very large focus on only worrying about things they can control. So if it's in their control, then they will focus on it. If it's not in their control, they learn to let go of it. And I feel like the older I get, the more I understand how wise that really is. Because if you try to control the things around you that are not yours to control, you will get so many health problems, mental, physical, whatever, and you're just going to suffer. Another piece of advice, so this will be the third one because I just thought of it now. Another piece of advice is worrying is like suffering the same situation twice. So don't worry about it to the point where you're paralyzed, because most of the fears that we have in general, just generally, most of the fears that we have never happen. My uncle always said, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And I felt like that was always kind of the best way to go with things like that. So prepare for the worst, but it probably is not going to happen. That's the thing. It's probably not going to happen. Now, along the same lines, if you're worried about what Korean people might think about you as a foreigner, generally Korean people are very kind. They stereotype each other. But they're very kind to foreigners. They usually love asking questions, and you'll probably, The people I've usually had trouble with are older. You would not believe the amount of old men that think, that think we're still in the war and think I'm a Russian hooker. I have had men literally grab me because they think I am a Russian hooker. And I am not, for the record. I am not a Russian hooker. But for what they think of you, I think the best piece of advice, this is really brutal, but the best piece of advice I ever got was in high school. I read this somewhere. And the advice was, whatever people think of you is none of your damn business. And the idea was, let people think. That's their right to think whatever they want. But just keep your character, keep focused on your character. You can't control what people think. You can't control how people treat you. You can't control what people say about you, but you can control your character. And if you control your character, then whatever they say, think, or do towards you won't stand because there's no evidence for it. And that's the best you can do in any situation, I would say. So just focus on your character, because as the Stoics would say, it's the only thing you can control. You can't control the outside stuff. But I would say regardless of the unpleasantries you will undoubtedly run into no matter where you go. Korea, America, Switzerland, anywhere. Sorry, Switzerland. I just picked that country randomly. Wherever you go, I just say focus on living the life you want to live. I enjoy my life here, despite all of the unpleasantries that I have ran into. But I've also ran into plenty of unpleasantries in my hometown, so it's just the way it is. So yeah, come on over. Come on over, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Crystal Jewel 2608 asks, why and when did you start to write? I touched on that earlier in the thing when I started this, and I started writing as soon as I could. As soon as I could figure out how the pencil worked, that's when I started writing. But it wasn't good. And it wasn't good probably, it wasn't good for a long time. And I studied really hard. When would I say that I actually got good at writing? Probably after I turned 30. Yeah, after my 30s. And I started writing as soon as I could. And I think I could go and look at all of my old writing now and just burn it. I don't think. But it took me that long to figure out what I wanted to write. Because I didn't know that I wanted to write romance. Because I didn't like the idea of writing romance, because most romance novels are so shallow. That's the best word I can think for them. Because they're written for a certain market. And there are people who write to market, and I cannot be one of those people. I mean, the people that write to market who know their audience and write exactly the tropes that their audience loves, and they write the exact plot twists that their people love. I can't do it. I just can't do it. So I don't like most romance novels. I actually went on a romance novel binge for the last 2 years because I started writing romance, and I was just so like, I hate these. They're just, they just spent no time on their characters. Like, every historical romance is just Pride and Prejudice rebranded. Just like every single one. It's just the same story. And so I just couldn't handle it. So it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to write. I actually wrote the Seven Princes on Wattpad. I wrote the Seven Princes as an experiment because I wanted to see if I could write romance or if I could at least get better at it. And that's where I found out that I really like writing romance, because I thought I wanted to write fantasy, but my fantasy novels just weren't or my fantasy stories just weren't clicking the way I wanted them to. And they just kind of felt soulless. And then I started writing romance, and I'm like, this is me. This is me. I'm a romantic. And romance is actually one of the hardest to write, I think. Because with fantasy or horror or young adult or literary, you don't really get deeply personal with vulnerability. But when you write romance, you're basically showing everyone what you fantasize about romantically. And that's terrifying. That's a whole nother level of vulnerability. And I feel like all writing is vulnerable. But for me, personally, writing romance was extremely vulnerable because I was like, oh, people can see, my mother is going to read this book and she's going to see like what I have fantasized about. And that was the most terrifying to me. It's actually the same case with me. I can't find the genre I want to write in. Usually depends on what genre I'm interested in. No. I would say no. Actually, because like I just said, I'm not interested in romance books. I hate them. Well, hate's a strong word. No, I really don't like them. I like visual novels, though. I like visual romance novels. And that's the weird thing. I don't actually like romance novels. But I like visual romance novels. And I used to play them a lot because of my video game design major. And I always wanted to make one, and I still want to make one someday. But no, you don't have to write in the genre that you like reading. I mostly read Gothic novels. I don't write Gothic novels, although I do have some elements of Gothic novels in my writing, because my favorite part of Gothic novels is how they go deeply into the terrors of humanity and the horror and evil within each person. And I love that kind of stuff. I absolutely love it. So I try to put that kind of in my romance, which seems like an awkward place, but Gothic novels are really horror plus romance. So I take the romantic part of Gothic novels and I put that into my writing. But as you can see, I don't really write Gothic style novels. I write random stuff. I used to really, really love fantasy, and I tried to write fantasy, and I just wasn't really, I wouldn't say I was bad at it, because I really enjoyed it, but I don't enjoy world building. That's the problem. Fantasy, you have to look at elements that you enjoy in a genre. So with romance, I really enjoy writing romance because I really, really enjoy character chemistry and character depth. And so romance is the best genre for character depth. I don't feel like, this is my personal opinion, I don't feel like romance novels utilize that aspect enough. So what they'll do is they'll write, frenemies to lovers type of deal, and they'll just copy and paste that for everything. And there's very few novels that go into the depths of how people fall in love with each other and how people create a trusting bond and how people are influenced by someone they're interested in. I feel like I feel like modern romance novels miss the psychology and philosophy of people connecting with other people or people connecting with themselves. And I feel like romance writers should really, really hone in on that, but they won't because it won't sell, and that's the sad part. But with fantasy, I love reading fantasy. I loved reading fantasy when I was a kid. The first chapter book I ever read was Witch's Cat. I can't remember the author's name. It's a really, really old book. Good luck finding it. It's by Scholastic. And then my favorite author was Lloyd Alexander. He writes only fantasy. He's actually my inspiration to become a writer because he became like the first American writer to really bring fantasy to America. So like British literature already had a whole bunch of fantastic fantasy writers, but America really didn't have any. So Lloyd Alexander was like the pioneer of bringing fantasy novels into America. And so he was my favorite. I loved him. But I really hate world building. I don't like world building at all. I'd rather focus on characters. So me writing fantasy is not really a good deal, because fantasy readers like reading fantasy books for the new world that awaits them. So if you notice, all of the really, really popular fantasy books are all fantasy books that focus on worlds with a lot of world building, a lot of mechanics to them. So like Harry Potter has a crazy amount of mechanics to it. So it's a whole nother world you can learn about. Lord of the Rings, same thing. It's a completely different world with its own mechanics that you can kind of immerse yourself in. Percy Jackson, that kind of goes in between this world now and another world that lies somewhere else, another metaphysical world, I guess you could say. But it links together really well. So when you're writing, the readers are looking for a certain thing in each genre, and whatever you're drawn to is what you should write. So there's many genres I enjoy reading. I would never write them, because there's certain elements in there that I just don't care to do. And then oddly enough, I love writing romance, and I don't like reading it. And I also write at a young adult level, and I don't like young adult novels either. I don't like young adult novels because they're very copy-paste. And they all have the same themes and all the same characters. They're just kind of put into a mixer and then shaken and spread out like martinis. But I just don't enjoy it. And yet somehow I write romance with a young adult feel to it. I guess it's just, I change it to the way I would want to read it if it was a certain thing, but that's probably why my books don't sell as much, because I don't write in those expectations. And I'm not going to, because I don't care. I want to write whatever I want to write. My Choose the Ending novels were based on my background in video game design. That's what I wanted to write. And then the Beast of Napa, which will come out after my next book, that is based on my love for old classic novels like The Great Gatsby. And then I'm writing a poetry book. And so don't ask me what genre I write, because I don't know. Let's see. Sasumi, how do I make my characters or stories less dramatic? Drama is good. I think you mean melodramatic, because people love drama, but they don't love melodrama as much. Although I do love some melodrama because I love angst. But I have had editors point this out to me when I first started writing. And only a few years ago as well. There are certain things that when you're writing a character that'll feel melodramatic, and it helps to have an editor point those out to you. It helps to have a second pair of eyes. Remember, when you're writing, not everything is dependent on you. So you are the one writing the story, you are the one coming up with ideas and things, and you're the one writing the draft. But when you start to actually do like production, you'll have other people telling you, hey, this character's acting weird, or why would the character do this when they believe this? So you'll have feedback. So take care to get feedback, and ask for feedback if you think maybe, oh, this is a little too dramatic. I would say with fiction, they always say that the difference between reality and fiction is that fiction has to make sense. And so fiction does have to make sense. So that keeps it from being too overdramatic, is if everything makes sense. So if you have a character that just randomly bursts into tears, and I think I'm thinking of like, oh, what book is that? There's a Jane Austen book. I can't remember if it's Sense and Sensibility or if it's the last book she wrote before she died, but I can't remember what that title is. There's a character in there that was extremely melodramatic because it gave her attention. And so she was just extremely melodramatic. And she would just lay on the couch and just pretend she was sick and just moan and groan. And it was because it got her a lot of attention, and she enjoyed that. So it's like everyone has a reason for something with your characters. As long as they have a reason for it, it's not over dramatic. And then your editors or your readers can give you feedback on the other stuff, and then you can fix it. But it's good to have drama. Put in as much conflict as possible. People love conflict. And the more conflict, the better. Because what people want is to see the heroes overcome the conflict. And that's what we want to see, because that gives us hope when we have to face conflict in our own lives. So you either create conflict that the hero overcomes, or you create conflict that the hero created, or you have a conflict that the hero ignores and is destroyed by. So that's usually how storytelling goes. Same user, how should I write a story of mine with a strong female lead? So, strong female leads. Well, first you have to define strong in your own words. When I think strong character, I just think a strongly built character. I don't like the hashtag strong female leads thing, because I feel like it just creates the same female character who's always sexy, sassy, impenetrable, witty, has no faults except that she's too independent, blah. But my thing with that is it's not good storytelling. It's just not good storytelling. And people who enjoy good stories don't enjoy those kind of characters. People want characters with weaknesses, because characters with weaknesses have a place to grow. And you always want to see your characters grow, because that gives the reader kind of subconscious hope that whatever they're going through, they can grow through it as well. And so I would say to create, I've said this before, when I create female characters, I said this on my Wattpad not too long ago. When I create female characters, I never write the stereotypes. So I never write the mean girl stereotype, and I don't write the strong female lead character type, because I feel like strength comes in so many facets. There's so many ways to define strong, and if you want to create strong characters, the best thing to do is to focus on their motivations and then their weaknesses and how they overcome their weaknesses. So if you follow me on Wattpad, you've probably read Marriage of Inconvenience, and by most facets, by most standards, that's the word I want. By most standards, that main female character is not like a strong type. And I made her that way on purpose because of her background. And so the way I made her strong was I made sure that she had strengths and weaknesses, because everyone has strengths and weaknesses. There's not a human being on this planet that only has weaknesses or only has strengths. And so your characters shouldn't have only weaknesses or only strengths either. And I always make sure to base it on her relationship with her family. So, here's an example. So when I was I actually think Cinderella is an amazing character. And I think she's an amazing character. I know people give her a lot of flack, especially in like the Disney versions and stuff. But I actually think she's an amazing character because her background is extremely tragic. So her mother died before even knowing her. Her father was her only friend, really. And then her father marries someone else, and he tragically dies, and then she's left in an abusive home with an abusive stepmother, emotionally abusive, and 2 emotionally abusive stepsisters, no family, seemingly no friends. And she doesn't fight back, probably because that family is the last connection to her father that she has. And that's probably why she's so complacent while she lives with that family. And so she won't fight back in respect to her past father. And also probably with the hope that there'll be a real family at some point, because if you think about it, she's never really had a real family. She didn't know her father long enough. She didn't know her mother at all. If she did, it was a very short period of time. And so I really like her character because it makes sense to me. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that Cinderella would be a rebellious person, really. Especially with the way that she loved her father so much. And so I try to think of the family backgrounds and how that would affect anybody. And then I also think strength is whatever you decide it is as the writer. And so all my female characters are very, very different in terms of strength. And I try to make them so that their personality reflects what they believe in and their relationship with their family. They also always have to have weaknesses. They can't be brilliant all the time, because none of us are brilliant all the time. I don't make them too independent. I don't make any of my characters independent, because I don't believe people are independent. I believe they're interdependent. And it's not a bad thing, because people need each other. So I try to make my characters influenced by each other. So, like, even with the 5 Princes, when I published that, if you noticed in that book, the main character, Marina, at first is extremely independent and rebellious, and for good reason, because she's been kind of placed in this situation that is extremely unfair. And I really tried to focus on, like, with Nikos. Nikos gives her a hard time the entire time. But if you notice, he doesn't really do anything terrible towards her, and he actually helps her out a lot. And it takes her half the book to realize she's done nothing for him at all. And that really softens her. And so I tried to create relationships like that. My female characters always apologize. My male characters always apologize. All my characters apologize in some form or another, because being human, you have to apologize at some point or another. And that helps you grow. And usually the people that don't apologize or don't learn from their mistakes or don't, repent, we would say in church, those who don't turn around and grow from their mistakes, they usually end up dead in my books. Because I feel like, metaphorically, people who don't own up to their mistakes and don't apologize and don't try to see other perspectives usually end up spiritually or emotionally dead. So that's how I do that. And then usually with side female characters, I try to make them a reflection of the main character. So in the 5 Princes, Marina is the main character, and she is extremely independent, and she wants to be a karate instructor, and she doesn't want to be at the palace because subconsciously, deep down, she feels like she can't fit in. And she has a conversation with Julian in the library, one of the princes, that kind of spills out. Her true feelings comes out. She doesn't even know they're there. And it comes out that she doesn't think she's good enough. And so one of the side characters is her kind of beautician, I guess you could say. It's a girl that's an incredibly royal character, someone of royal character, who kind of reflects what Marina thinks a real princess would act like. And so I make her kind of a mirror, so the main character can compare herself and kind of grow from that. And so all of my side female characters, they're fleshed out to be their own character, but they're also meant to be like either a dark mirror or a light mirror to the main character. to show them kind of what they're missing or what they're doing well or where they need to improve or what they could become for better or worse. So in the rebellion, I made, what's her name? I changed her name twice. The main character, Jaehwa, is compared to a female character. Oh my gosh, I forgot her name. And it's my book. This is my life. Anyways, the main character gets compared to this other female character a lot, and she never meets her. But that's supposed to be the dark mirror. That's supposed to be what she could end up as if she continues to be as unyielding as she is. And that female character is dead. So that's basically it. When you read your work after, sometimes I feel like I regret it, but anyhow proud of myself. Yeah, that happens a lot. Just keep writing. Keep writing, keep reading. You'll find lots of stuff that you are proud of and will equally cringe at. Let's see. And I think is this my last question that I have here? Every time I read a new book, still from Sasumi, every time I read a new book, the ideas captivate my mind, and I'll definitely have an idea of writing my own book with that ideas, but I don't copy them. I need some time solving my problem. So this is not exactly a question, but I'm assuming you're asking about I think you're talking about like kind of like when you read something, you're inspired by it, so you kind of want to put it in your books too. I'd say that's normal. What's the order of this? 9. Okay. Advice on how to avoid using wrong verbs in certain places. Trial and error. Trial and error. So whenever you read something, you'll probably be inspired by it. So I just finished reading The Castle of Atranto. I think that's how you say it. But it's the first Gothic novel that was ever written. And it's a glorious, glorious mess of a book. That genre didn't exist. So Gothic novels didn't exist before this book. But every Gothic novel that existed after it is brilliant. And this book is actually really fun if you're a Gothic novel nerd like me. But it is a mess. It is terrible. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's really out there. It's not written cleanly because, like I said, this genre didn't exist. And so, but after reading it, like I had so many ideas, and I'm like, oh, I want to write a Gothic novel, and I want to write a romance. And you'll probably feel that way, and it's fantastic. Just go with it. Just go with the flow. Inspiration is great. And then just make something from it. And then you probably whatever you make while you're inspired, you won't use ever again. But you'll take elements from that and you'll put it in something else. And like I said before, if you're a beginner, copying is fine. If you're a beginner and you're learning, copy. Just copy. Don't publish. Just copy though. And then you'll slowly kind of come into your own style. And as an artist, artists always take everything. They'll take little pieces of little things everywhere, and they'll put it into a story. Really, everyone steals. Every book you've ever read is stolen from something else. And every writer you've ever read was influenced by 10 or 20 other writers. And what makes you unique as a writer is how you combine all those things together. That's what makes you unique. So you take your personal interests. So my personal interests are, I love psychology, philosophy, theology. I love really, really deep characters. I love exploring the relationships between people. I like historically, I like things from Asia. I like books. I like Gothic books. I like books that talk about humanity's darkest parts. But I don't like true crime. Figure that one out. I like reflections. I like meditations. I like children's fantasy books. I like really old classical novels. I like old poetry. I love music, all kinds of music. I love really dark music. Like Teflon Sega is probably one of my top 3, and that's just kind of like some dark electronica, and that inspires actually a lot of my stuff. I love video games, things. So all of that together makes me a unique writer because of all of my combination of interests. And that's what happens when you finally get your style, is you start to combine all of the things that you like and you're interested in and inspired by. And that's why artists have all people really have kind of like these eras of books and things. So most people will write in a certain genre, but if you watch like musicians or painters or things like that, they kind of have like phases. They'll have their specialty, but they also have phases, and that's because they're inspired by different things at different times, and they're also going through different parts of life at different times. So all that combinations together is what will make you a unique and fantastic writer. So you have that thing when you want to copy the idea but still want to make it your own work you'll be satisfied with. Yeah, I'd say just copy it and see where it goes, and if it goes somewhere awesome, great. If it goes somewhere too similar, then you'll just change it. And the more you write, the more you'll be able to change things in your own style. So most of my writing is influenced by plot twists, more so in video games than anywhere else. Because I grew up on a lot of Japanese RPGs. So that's, and then I spent a lot of time in my 20s watching Korean dramas, so that influenced a lot of my writing. So basically my writing is like Gothic novels mixed with video games, mixed with Korean dramas. And that's how I write. And also virtual novels, because I love virtual novels, even though some of them are written pretty badly. But some of them are written really well, and they influence a lot of my writing. Save all the lives you do. I need it at times. Oh, my throat. All right. Well, this has almost been 2 hours of questions. That's amazing. I guess usually it's an hour, but I missed last month because I moved to Seoul and I didn't have internet, so I couldn't do this. But now I have internet, and so I get to hang out with you guys again, and I'm really happy. And I hope I will post this later on YouTube and stuffs, and definitely my Instagram if it fits. Oh, it might be too long for my Instagram, I think. But I will post it on YouTube. Maybe I'll post it in snippets on Instagram if I'm not too lazy and actually get around to doing it. But I will post it. Thank you for all your questions. They were good questions, and I will try to do this consistently, once again, as I was doing before. But I really like doing Q&A with you guys. And let's do this again. I hope you had, let's see, any advice for someone who wants to move to Korea and be an ASL teacher? So you need a bachelor's degree. You can get your bachelor's degree in anything you want. Mine's in video game design. So get a bachelor's degree, then get your ESL certification. You can get it online. It doesn't take too long. And then Asia, each country is different. on what kind of English speakers they want. I know European countries usually look for British English speakers or people close to that. Asia usually likes American English speakers. From what I've heard, you have CELTA. Oh, well, then you're smarter than me. You'll be fine. I never got CELTA. I have no desire for CELTA. And I'm a philosophy major, and I don't want to touch CELTA. So, good for you. Good for you. That's amazing. That's a good accomplishment. I've heard CELTA is brutal, so hats off to you. Yeah, you can definitely come on over. Decide if you want to work for the public school system or if you want to work for a hagwon. Be careful of hagwons, of course, because sometimes they will not pay people. So check reviews by people who have worked there before. The public school system is fine if you like kids. And then university, if you have a master's degree, you can teach at universities in English in whatever subject. So basically, if I finish my philosophy, master's degree, I can go teach at Korean schools in English, and I can teach philosophy, which is not my goal, but it is an option in case I need it. And I like collecting certifications and degrees and stuff, because I'm kind of ADHD, and I just like doing random things for random periods of time. So that's what I do. I teach at a hagwon, so I do like the hagwons better, because I'm not good with children, and they scare me. And I tried 2 years of children's ministry to get over that fear, and now it is worse. So do not bring me your children. I'm not good with them. Alright, so guys, I am going to head off. It is almost midnight in Korea. This has been an awesome Halloween. Thanks for spending it with me. I will see you guys next time. Have a good night. Have a good week. See you guys.